In this film, we can apply both Freud and Jung's insights to understand the symbolic and psychological tensions of different scenes that may not be readily apparent to the audience. While the Oedipal complex serves best to describe the relationship between Snow White and the stepmother early in the film, we move from that into the individuation of Snow White through her willingness to incorporate her shadow into her conscious being. The latter is a struggle that helps explain the magical defeat of the stepmother at the climactic end of the film. So in the wedding ballroom scene, we have the new Queen Claudia basking in the attentions of the public and the king. Meanwhile, young Lily, Snow White, adorns herself with her mother's gown. It's her wedding gown, and immediately takes the gaze of adoration away from Claudia. Lily's father, the king, shifts his attention and adoration towards Lily, who then has the first dance at the wedding ball with the king, usurping the stepmother while taking up experimenting with her mother's gown and role. This castrates Claudia. All of her power is lost, and she even loses her heir and the ability to conceive more children, which marks the eventual replacement and demise of her. The scene demonstrates the Oedipal-Electra dynamic of vying for the attention of the parent of the opposite sex and competing with the person in the mother's role, a common trope of fairy tales. It is demonstrated using the gaze of the father, and then secondly, through the camera direction that directs our attention to the face of Lily and the objectification of her as the object of desire. The scene is ripe for a further analysis of unpacking the desires of each of the characters, demonstrated using sight and desire combined as the gaze. We can see in the opening scene the establishment of the repressed function, that which is lost and is to be recovered, which is the mother figure that is lost and is replaced by a non-nurturing, rational, cold stepmother who is marked by her dishonesty and ruthlessness. In the Jungian perspective, we will see Lily attempt to reestablish the imbalance or bring that elixir back. And by recovering that which has been repressed, her mother, she brings back into consciousness while attempting to wrestle her with her shadow, those desires and the ruthlessness to get them that she has repressed and which she projects onto Claudia, or which Claudia represents. So if we look at archetypes and personality integration, then the characters first, well, they need to rely on stereotypes and sometimes archetypal personalities to make them clear, simple, and easy to recognize and understand their motivation and make them memorable to the audience. The characters of the original Disney film playing the Seven Dwarfs, they're memorable because they are simple and well-defined in their characterization and in their personalities, while Snow White and the Prince suffer from their blandness. And the opposite is also true of this film, where the bandits that have replaced the dwarves represent a nameless horde of forgetful characters because none of them have easily defined features, nor do they play any larger role in the plot other than that the chief bandit becomes a love interest and distraction for Lily. So if films are to allow for a Jungian analysis, one would think they conclude with integration of the ego and shadow together in a self. But what of films that end with the conquering of the shadow? Are they promoting the adoption of a false self? In our film, Lily destroys Claudia by stabbing the mirror. When she investigates the mirror, one would expect her to see herself, but instead she sees Claudia and then stabs her. The mirror shard also scars her face, perhaps signifying that she has matured through that release of blood and that she incorporated a part of the shadow into her conscious features. The problem of destroying Claudia is that it furthers the idea that healing is about somehow reestablishing order. Perhaps here it is more the taming of the shadow that serves to prop the ego up, projecting all vice onto that other figure. So in the time of watching the film, the audience has delved into the unconscious and seen the shadow and defeated it, but that isn't really integration. It isn't even recognition of the existence of the shadow. And that this is perhaps a good question to leave without a clear answer. Do these films further support the act of active repression of unconscious sort of shadow elements? And is that harmful or antagonistic towards individuation? Or is it to be interpreted as the absorption of those features as it has been confronted and tamed? So it is now eliminated as a material other, but now as part of the self with the scar, something that is acknowledged but not taken control of. Well, the film was a fledgling production of Showtime that wanted to make an adult fairy tale that drew upon a myriad of differing genre strategies to attract a larger audience. And while it began as a plausible historical retelling of the tale by providing the realistic background upon which a legend could emerge, By the second half, the magical elements, which could still be explained as a postpartum depression, fueled hallucinatory nightmare perhaps, but we are never really given that perspective. The insight we are given into the motivations of the stepmother are in part due to the excellent portrayal by Sigourney Weaver, but the complexity of her character are then replaced in the second half by a revenge tale that feels like it is rushing towards the end.